This is All Dolphins Talk on the Lads Football Network as the Miami Dolphins are coming off three consecutive wins by a 95-34 margin, Alan. And yet they're taking on an Arizona team coming off three consecutive wins by a 105-54 margin. So we have a very interesting game to keep our eyes on this Sunday between Miami and Arizona. How's it going, Alan?
It's going very well. Yeah, it's a really good matchup actually between two very good teams. And Arizona's last win was a really impressive one. That crazy Sunday night game against Seattle that they pulled out in overtime. And then meanwhile, the Dolphins took care of one of Arizona's NFC West foes, the LA Rams, in very convincing fashion. Even though the stats in terms of yardage were completely crazy the other way.
Yeah, I was going over this. Actually, I made Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post. We were doing our weekly show a couple of days ago, and since he had we did it on Tuesday, and he had the Monday Night Giant game, so he really hadn't gotten caught up yet on everything specifically that gone on in the game. And I was going over all the stats of the game, and it just blew his mind, especially when I said there were 3 sacks in the game, 3 by both teams, and in every sack there was a turnover. I mean, that just never happens. Throw in the fact that 5 of the 6 touchdowns in the game resulted on either a defensive or special teams play. So it was a very strange game, but luckily for the Dolphins, they were on the positive side of the strangeness because they made a lot more impact plays than the Rams did.
Yeah, they did. They completely drove Jared Goff crazy with their blitzes, with their fake blitzes by lining up a whole bunch of guys at the line of scrimmage and then dropping them back, which is what happened on the one play where Christian Wilkins, a defensive lineman, was at the line of scrimmage. And while a couple of linebackers came in on the blitz, Wilkins simply dropped back a couple of steps and got in the passing lane for an easy pick to set up the Dolphins' first touchdown and start what was that run in the first half where they scored 28 points and didn't do a whole lot offensively.
Wasn't Flores the defensive coach with the Patriots when they won the Super Bowl and did this to Goff?
Oh, absolutely. And don't think that wasn't brought up several times. And it was kind of sort of the same game plan, which was basically, again, like driving crazy with the blitzes and the looks that they gave him, and it worked to perfection in the Super Bowl. And it worked, I wouldn't say to perfection, but it worked magic in the first half. The Rams looked like they were starting to figure it out a little bit late in the third quarter, early fourth quarter, made it 28-17. Then they were driving, looking like they were about to make it 28-24, and they had a nasty drop on a third down pass and then missed a field goal to keep it at 28-17, and that was the ball game.
Yeah, different than the Niner game because the Rams actually started to come back, and there were some sweaty moments there. But still, when you inflict that much damage to one team, it's got to be historical that you're going to lose that game. You just don't lose those games, even though the Dolphins historically won the game because with the little amount of offense they had and the fact that they were outgained by so many yards and still found a way to win the game by double digits.
They had one of those games like that in 2009 against the Jets where they won 30-25 and they had 104 yards of total offense. That's 104. Except they had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns by Ted Ginn Jr. and a fumble return for a touchdown by Jason Taylor. And just like that, that's 21 points right there.
Yeah, we're always used to it with the Jet Dolphin games, though, especially back then.
Yeah.
All right, So all of a sudden we get this question regarding Tua about whether or not the reason they're starting him is to find out, just to make sure that he's the right guy, because they have Houston's pick in the draft. It's going to be a top 10 pick, it looks like. They want to make sure Tua is the guy before they decide, well, maybe he's not the guy, and we have to spend another first-round top 10 pick on a quarterback. Where did that come from?
Well, here's the thing, though. The report, and we need to be very accurate about this, said that it was one of the reasons that they're starting Tua. Well, Adam Schefter got it from sources close to the door, or league sources. I'm sorry, that's how we phrased it in his report. Brian Flores came out when he was asked a generic question about quarterback and their size, because the Dolphins are playing Arizona and Kyler Murray, and you got 2 somewhat undersized quarterback. Well, Kyler Murray is very undersized, and Tua is a little bit undersized. And in the middle of answering the question, Brian Flores basically said he wanted to like speak his mind about that particular story, saying that he doesn't know like Dolphin source close to the Dolphins thinking, and he basically decided to shoot down that idea. But here's the thing: what would we expect Brian Flores to say about this particular situation? It's not like he's going to say, or anybody else with the Dolphin organization is going to say, "Yeah, that was
Yeah,
part of our
if
thinking,"
that
because
was
you don't
true,
want to
you
put
mean?
that
Yeah,
thought.
if that was true, yeah.
Correct. And here's the other thing too: is if Tua flops the rest of the season, does anybody really believe that they wouldn't give serious thought to taking another quarterback early next year when they could have? You mentioned top 10; it could wind up being as early as top 5. If they're staring at a top 5, could even be top 3, and they have an opportunity to land one of the top quarterbacks
Mm.
in next year's draft, and Tua in the 10 games that he played this year really struggles. I think the Dolphins would be doing themselves a disservice if they would not at least seriously consider it. So to suggest that that notion has no merit, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't. I'm not on board that. I think it does have merit.
I think it's one of those things that has merit, but it's one of those things that's like one of those natural. Well, of course, it's part of it, but do you actually trust Tua? That's the thing that I think everybody might, and I think that's where we're getting a little bit confused here, and maybe we're thinking too much into this. Is that, well, wait a second, does that mean then, because you are thinking about that we saw what happened last week. He didn't look too good. Maybe you didn't like what you saw in practice, and now you just want to throw him out there for a few games to see if he is as bad as he's looked in practice. So I think that's what I think can get carried away with one of those kind of rumors or one of those that type of analysis. But I agree with what you say. Of course, you want to see if this guy. That's what everybody does when they throw in these quarterbacks early. That's part of it. You want to see, is this guy the future or not? But I just think it would have to be so bad. He would have to look so much like he's totally not the guy for the Dolphins to even consider making such a move in the draft.
I agree, because obviously it would be a pretty bad indictment on having picked him fifth overall in the first place.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it would have to be a complete disaster. But again, for me, it's like one of those that highly, highly doubt that it would come to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's right to completely dismiss the notion that that would be a possibility. And again, as the report mentioned, it was one of several factors, and I think they might have been 12 different factors involved, and that was one of them.
And I don't know, that doesn't even come up if Tua has a good game.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it wasn't just a stat. It was beyond the stats that it just wasn't really. It didn't look good. And again, they were in a situation where they didn't need anything from the offense, because the defense and the special teams will help them out so much. But I mean, the offense was bad, and then we've seen some bad offensive play from the Dolphins in years past, and so we recognize it when we see it.
Yes. And so this is an important game, no question, and an important few games here for the organization, because you can say, you could look at it as, well, yeah, okay, I guess if he doesn't work out, we can just go ahead and get another quarterback. Well, that sounds nice, but unless his name is Trevor Lawrence, I don't care what you say about any of the quarterbacks. I don't care what you say about Fields. None of the other guys are can't miss guys like Lawrence and Burrow. So this is a scenario you do not want to go down, and it's huge that Tua, even if he doesn't look great, it's so big that he looks at least better than the way he looked last week.
Completely agree. Nobody needs. We don't need to see him throw for 350 yards
No.
and 4 touchdowns, but we need for him and for the offense to show some consistency and some production, which certainly wasn't there last week.
Now, Myles Gaskin is not going to be able to help him out in the backfield, which is not good news. And Breida hasn't practiced the last couple of days. So who's in the backfield this week?
Well, here's the thing about the Dolphins is they're a crazy team like this. They have 6 halfbacks on the roster now, after the trade for DeAndre Washington with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm not talking fullback. I'm not counting Chandler Cox, the fullback, and I'm not counting the 2 guys they have who played quarterback in college, who are kind of, I wouldn't say gadget players, but
Okay.
kind of multi-purpose players, Lynn Bowden Jr. and Malcolm Perry. And so beyond those beyond those guys, you mentioned Breida with injury, Gaskin with injury. Then you have Patrick Laird, Salvin Ahmed, who came up from the practice squad, the aforementioned DeAndre Washington, and somebody who's been easy to forget because he's been inactive the past 3 weeks, Jordan Howard.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the possibility of here's his chance. If he's going to make something out of this season, this could very well could be his chance, because not sure if anybody else really stands out as a logical candidate to start at running back with Gaston out and with Breida a major question mark.
Would you be guessing who would get the most carries, the most snaps at running back this week?
I would be totally guessing.
What would your best guess be?
And my best guess would be, that's a great question. My best guess would be Patrick Laird.
Okay.
But here's what I would say is I would think they would replace some of what you do in the running game with short passes that almost are disguised as they're almost like running plays in disguise, basically. I think you might see more of the Wildcat. We saw it for a couple of snaps last week. Not personally, not a huge fan of it, but I could easily see that happening with either Malcolm Perry or Lynn Bowden Jr. or both of them.
Yeah.
But in terms of pure carries, the thing is, Jordan Howard was a starter in the opener against New England, did not go well the couple of times he carried, and they bailed out on that pretty quickly. So, history serves as a good predictor. So maybe the same thing happens and Patrick Laird gets the most of the carries. But that's just a wild guess. I certainly wouldn't expect any Dolphin running back to get a ton of carries.
Okay. Was there any one thing that you saw in Tua's performance that completely caught you off guard regarding how poorly he played? Was there a lot more where you can say, well, you got to give credit to the Rams defense. They put enough pressure on him. The offensive line, that has been an issue, and it was an issue in this game. It didn't protect Tua the way he needs to get protected as a young quarterback in this situation. Or were there a few things specifically that just stood out regarding his own poor play that you were, I'm surprised that he did that. I'm surprised that he played that poorly.
Yeah, you know what? There wasn't really anything that jumped out, and again, I hate to go back to this, but I'm in the camp of I want to see Tua show it to me, to get on board with the idea that he's destined for stardom in the NFL. I wasn't necessarily as high on his game as a lot of my colleagues down here in South Florida, who basically think his ticket to the Hall of Fame in Canton is basically just awaiting him. That said, he was not helped by a couple of drops. Gaskin dropped a pass. Preston Williams dropped a couple of passes. There was one play also, it wasn't necessarily great separation from the receivers. There was one play where he went down the sideline to Mike Gesicki, which was a really nice pass. The only problem was that Gesicki did not have great separation. And the DB, I believe it's Juris Williams, made a really nice play on the ball. I mean, Gesicki actually had both hands on the ball, was ready to cradle it in, and Williams basically got his hand in there on the ball and stripped it away from him to cause the incompletion. But outside of that, again, he didn't get a ton of help from the offensive line, so it certainly wasn't all on Tua in terms of what happened with the offense against the Rams. But there was not a whole lot where you looked at his performance and really could hang your hat on and say, yeah. This is why he's going to be a star in this league.
It's interesting because you have a coach, Brian Flores, who is 7-4 against the spread as a road dog with the Dolphins, and yet Cliff Kingsbury, who still I don't think gets enough credit. That's because most of the media trashed him, so they're not going to praise him just yet. 7-1 against the spread versus winning teams. That's pretty good. So you got these two second-year coaches that have pretty good records in this same spot going up against each other.
They did praise Cliff Kingsbury's house, though, we have to say that. And for good reason.
Uh-huh.
And for good reason. No, it's a nice matchup, too. It's a great coaching matchup because you have Kingsbury, who's an offensive guru, against Brian Flores, who's a defensive guru, and something has to give. You're looking at the number one offense in terms of yards per game. That's Arizona, and you have the number one scoring defense with the Dolphins. So the problem with for the Dolphins in this game, as opposed to the game against the Rams, is they're not facing an immobile quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Jared Goff,
Yep.
So that's going to complicate things. It's not quite as simple as just sending a whole bunch of pass rushers at the quarterback, because if Kyler Murray happens to avoid the initial pressure, now all of a sudden he's got some open field, and he's certainly got the speed to make things happen with that.
All right. So next week, are we looking at the Chargers at home?
Yep,
And
Chargers
then
at
at
home,
Denver.
and then at Denver.
All right. Is there a bye after that?
No, they've had their bye.
We
They've
just
had
had
their
our
bye.
bye. Yeah, I get so confused because of the way the season's gone. So,
Well,
you
the
don't even
next
know if it's
two.
a bye or a COVID or, yeah, I'm just, I'm all screwed up.
Well, the next 2 weeks are rescheduled games.
Those are the
This one,
rescheduled games.
the one against Arizona and the previous one against the Rams were previously scheduled, but the one against the Chargers was supposed to have taken place already, and the one against Denver was supposed to have taken place. Now, see, now I'm confused.
Yeah. So
Was
that's, yeah.
supposed to have taken place already, also.
All right. Well, Dolphins are a 5-point dog in this one, but next week they'll most likely be a favorite. Matter of fact, they could be a favorite the next couple of weeks in those matchups. Herbert's next week. That should be a good one. Looking forward to that. The two rookie quarterbacks. That should be something. But hey, let's just hope, Dolphin fans, of course, hoping big time that Tua starts to show some baby steps in production. That's very, very important for the franchise and for Tua. Either way, it should be a good game, or we're hoping it could be a good game. A lot depends, obviously, on Tua. But I'm looking forward to talking to you again next week about it. And Alan, I know things have been pretty busy with you. It's always busy this time of year, especially now. It's a crazy week and it's a crazy year. But the Dolphins are so far right now a winning team as of,
Yeah.
what is this, week 9? Yeah.
It's going to heading into week 9, and
Yeah.
one thing we need to say about Tua also, because we were ragging on his performance pretty well, and rightfully so, but it was his first NFL start. So,
Sure.
So let's give the kid a chance and see how it goes.
Alan, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it, Greg.